Well, good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another of our Wednesday webinar series, a series that started back in January of 2013. And today we're celebrating, webinar number 100. I'm Kelly Beard and I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC. And today I'm joined by Elizabeth Hamlin, who will be producing our webinar. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a lot of the relief opportunities that are out there, hopefully, and some of the other non-relief opportunities to try to get businesses in Ridgecrest back to speed and going in a rapid fashion. So before we get going, let me give you a little information about the Small Business Development Center. We are a part of the Central California Regional Network, which is a 15-county area through the heart of Central California. We cover the counties of Kern, Inyo, and Mono. So we have the furthest south, east, and north counties in this particular region. So the services we provide, we'll get into as we go through the webinar today. Just wanted to let you know about our next webinar, which is going to be next Wednesday, and that is on July 24th, and it's going to be on Yelp. Maker and Breaker of Businesses is the title. And I think this fits in well with a lot of the discussion we're going to have today about generating more sales and to making sure that your businesses online are in a good way. So more information on that, but right now, since this is our 100th webinar, I'm very pleased that we have a special video from Congressman Kevin McCarthy. So take it away, Congressman.
Hi, I'm Congressman Kevin McCarthy, and I want to congratulate you all on your 100th webinar. As both a CSUB graduate and a small businessman myself, I'm proud of your efforts to strengthen our local business community. These webinars are a vital asset, boosting our economy and helping Kern County business owners reach their potential peak. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for the critical services you provide, and congratulations on reaching this incredible milestone.
Well, thank you, Congressman McCarthy, and for all you're doing out in the Ridgecrest community and everybody in the Ridgecrest community, what they're doing as well. So a couple of things, the upcoming events that are kind of associated toward this earthquake relief disaster planning that we're doing. We're going to be talking a lot about funding opportunities a little later through the SBA and others. So, but it's important to note that not everybody is going to be able to apply and get small business financing through disaster relief. So we have an event coming up next month, August the 21st, and that's the Kern Capital Summit. And what we'll have is, we like to say the Capital Summits are kind of like an inverted Shark Tank. What we do is we put, instead of having an entrepreneur stand before a group of investors, we have the investors, the lenders, the people that have grant programs for small businesses, and put them in front of a room full of entrepreneurs. Like many of our events, or almost all of our events, they're free of charge. We get a lot of sponsorships from organizations that help us out, and we'll be mentioning those throughout the webinar today. And that is coming up on August the 21st. Space is limited, and you can see where to sign up there on the calendar. Also, maybe a little more pertinent to those in Ridgecrest and Eastern Kern is the following month, September 27th, we have the East Kern Capital Summit. And just take the same description that I gave you and apply it to Tehachapi, where we'll be hosting the summit this year. So that's coming up on September 27th. Again, it's going to be a lot of small business options that are available to you. So please take advantage of the situation if you can and sign up, and we hope to see you there. So our topic today is on small business earthquake relief. And I'd like to say I've been through way too many of these disasters. It kind of maybe makes me a little bit old, but I've been through too many of these. I remember the first one that we went through that was a declared disaster region here in the San Joaquin Valley was in the late 80s, maybe 1988 or 89. And it was a frost-related damage to where the temperatures throughout the San Joaquin Valley, all the way up from, say, Lodi down to Bakersfield here, were in the teens, low teens, into mid-teens in many locations. And that disaster showed us a lot of things because there was extensive damage to crop production, particularly citrus, but also a lot of winter kill where a lot of those were killed. Since then, we've had a number of disasters. We have one that we'll talk about that is actually in place right now. And that disaster is actually because of the wildfires, but still can affect Kern County businesses. So our focus is on earthquake relief and other options that are available to small businesses, but there are other options out there, and there are another disaster that is working right now that Kern County businesses might be able to access. So I'm going to give you what we know right now, or at least what I know at the SBDC. And we had originally planned to include our partners from the U.S. Small Business Administration disaster relief, but somebody here, namely me, kind of got the cart before the horse, which I like to think is better than closing the barn door after all the cows got out. But our 100th webinar was originally planned to be on veteran lending, which is a crucial and important topic here in Kern County. But this one overrode that, and last week we made the decision to change to this topic. So here's what we know, and here's what you're going to get: a unique perspective today of a lot of the disasters that I have been through, a lot of the clients that we've worked with over the years, and some of the ways that we can help you along with the resources that are available. Right now, FEMA has concluded their assessment. I believe it was concluded yesterday. I was on the teletown meeting with Congressman McCarthy last night, and I mean, probably dozens of you attending today or more in the Ridgecrest community that were getting the up-to-date information. And that information included FEMA actually has concluded the assessment. So the process now goes on to a couple of other layers before it is determined if there is a declaration. Last night we learned that $100 million has passed the House for federal relief for the Ridgecrest and Kern and Trona communities. So what does that mean? That means basically $100 million that is going to repair infrastructure that was damaged by the quake, to federal buildings, to federal sites. I would think that the base would be included in that, and other things. We know that from reports that there is significant property damage reported. And relief for business, at least in my opinion, is very likely that there's going to result in a declaration, just not yet. So we got lots to get ready for. So let's go through this. And if you have questions at the end, please, we will try to answer any of your questions. If we don't know the answer, we will try to find them for you. So there's a little question and answer box that you can click and you can put in your questions, and we'll try to give you our best analysis to that particular issue. So why are we here today? We're here because 25% of small businesses that close after a disaster never reopen. That is a statistic that is widely used, and actually, you know, I like to think of it as being maybe a little bit higher than what we actually see, because many of the disasters, your tornadoes and your hurricanes, catastrophic wildfire, take out entire communities and everything in its path. So maybe that's a little higher than we're going to experience in Ridgecrest and in Eastern Kern County. However, we still want to be there and be able to assist businesses that are there and need the assistance. And with the SBDC, we have a lot of resources that are going to be available to you free of charge. So our role at the SBDC in disaster relief is the SBDC can help with SBA disaster loan applications. We can help you with work through that. Really, the one thing I really want to get across today is I want everybody out there who's a small business owner in Ridgecrest to evaluate the opportunities created by the disaster. Now, you're not going to hear that a lot, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit. But with a disaster also comes opportunities, and there's going to be opportunities that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And getting ready for those opportunities is something you really need to ramp up for and do right now. We also want you to leverage the resources that are available to you. And there's going to be local, state, and potentially federal disaster relief coming. And so leveraging those resources and the resources that you have in the community. We've already seen so many resources that are available for helping people with their lodging in their homes afterwards. While our focus is on small business, there'll be a lot of small business resources as well. we think it's important to develop an emergency response plan for the business. We had already planned to do a disaster planning webinar later this year, but there's a lot of things that you can do with risk management. And one thing that I thought of just recently was I see a TV commercial from an insurance company, and the insurance company talks about, I think, a woman that has a she shed in her backyard that catches on fire. And so it catches on fire, and she's on the phone with her insurance agent asking if she's covered. Now, what we want is our small businesses to be more proactive and not to be able to have to call the insurance agent to see if they're covered. So doing stuff with risk management and contingent planning for disasters is something that a small business needs to look at. We have a wonderful resource, risk management consultant here who can maybe look at that for you. Sales recovery. One thing about a disaster like this is that it's really important to generate sales as soon as possible once you recover from the disaster. And also it's important to diversify that sales stream to other activities potentially. So real quickly on the process, and I think many of you might already know the process, but after the disaster, an assessment is done by FEMA. The evaluations are then sent to the Governor's Office of OES, the Office of Emergency Services. And if it's determined that the state needs assistance, they seek assistance from the federal government. And the federal government is going to basically get involved, at least from an SBA's perspective, on two different types of loans. And those are going to be physical disaster loans, where you can pretty much see the damage or the threat of damage, or sometimes you can't even see the damage to structures. And they're going to be some type of relief for that. But then also there's a loan program, and we're going to really focus on that at the SBDC because, you'll be able to figure out if you have physical damage, but there's one part called the economic injury disaster loan. And what that is it kind of provides relief for businesses that are economically harmed. And let me give you a little example of that. Let's say you have a micro circuit board producer producing small amounts, say out of a little warehouse in Tehachapi. And one of their biggest customers is maybe on the base, maybe they're a manufacturing company that's been impacted. What you're going to find is that if their sales drop significantly, the ability for them to meet their expenditures and to continue as an ongoing business are going to be threatened. So the economic injury disaster loans are an important part and really are going to be available to any business in Kern County that loses a substantial amount of their revenue or sales from the disaster. So these again are going to be working capital loans, and they're going to be available even to other organizations such as nonprofit organizations. So that is going to be a real important step for us. We're trying to get the word out on the economic injury loans. So what are some of the first steps you might want to take? First and foremost, you're going to want to maintain your safety and secure property in your environment. Okay, that's probably something you know. If it is designated a FEMA event, like this presenter forecast, you need to register immediately with FEMA. FEMA is the initial source where everybody needs to go through, and FEMA will make a determination based on my prior experience if they can actually handle the situation or if it's something that they will defer to the U.S. Small Business Administration. So I mentioned earlier about opportunity, and really, again, think now. If you have a retail service business and it's out there, and you need to start thinking about opportunities that are going to present themselves now. And we'll get into that. So begin to document your losses and your other potential consequences. You need to start gathering information because it is a loan. What we're going to talk about today is a disaster loan. And that is kind of one of the issues that we see with disaster loans, and we'll elaborate on. And that's the fact that you're really adding more debt to your business. And by adding more debt, what you're doing, excuse me, What you're doing by adding more debt is adding more payment without generating any more revenue. So we need to look at the revenue section out there too. And we also need to leverage the resources. There's a lot of local support for businesses through the Indian Wells Valley EDC, the Chamber of Commerce, and others. So what are those opportunities that I speak so warmly of? Well, given this a little bit of thought, right now we know that likely there's $100 million or more of federal money coming in for repairs or reconstruction. So what does that mean to you? If you're a retail and service business, it means that there's going to be $100 million pumped into your community by people who are going to need other services. There's going to be contractors. There's going to be the need for construction. There's going to be hospitality. I mean, if you have a hotel, and I've stayed many nights in Ridgecrest, and it is a tight hotel market already. So hopefully your rooms are all up and rentable after the disaster. If not, if I had a lodging property, I would try to get them going as quickly as possible. The hotels are going to be full. It's coming. So then also we talked a little bit about the construction that's going to be going on and occurring. So oftentimes you might want to look into securing immediate funding. One thing we'll talk about with the disaster loans is that they are available to businesses that cannot acquire funding elsewhere. So when you cannot get money from another source, that is when the disaster loans kick in from the SBA. And you want to be able to reopen it as quickly as possible to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming. You know, one thing that was interesting, and I think I stole this from Mick Gleason, but there is an opportunity now that Ridgecrest tourism might increase and might increase substantially. I remember over the years we've had several discussions on, gee, how do we increase tourism in Ridgecrest? You know, we have 395, Interstate Highway 395 running right by us, and we have hundreds and thousands of people that come from the Los Angeles area and even San Diego that are traveling to areas north, such as Mammoth and potentially Bishop as well. So being only about 5 or 6 miles off the highway, it has been very difficult to capture those people. The good thing is that what you realize is now you've had millions of people experience this earthquake. They didn't experience like the people in Ridgecrest and Trona, but they experienced it. For many people, it'll be their first one. That snowboarder heading up 395 to Mammoth to catch some sweet, sweet powder. Yeah, they're coming. So all of a sudden at the first earthquake, let's go see Ridgecrest. So hopefully this is something that we can leverage for longer term as far as tourism for the community. Also, something we need to look at is entrepreneurial ventures created by a disaster. So what we have is now's the opportunity potentially for some other businesses to open because of the disaster. And we need to look and see what services aren't being met and what other opportunities might exist. So one of those opportunities, and this was planned before the earthquake, is the SBDC in conjunction with our local partners, the Indian Wells Valley EDC. We have a committee that is comprised of County of Kern economic development people, and also the base is participating along with others in order to put together a seminar that has been planned for August the 28th and September 11th. And what this is going to be on is winning money for innovation and technology. There's a lot of technology and there's a lot of very smart ideas that come out of the Ridgecrest community. And there's also $2.8 billion called America Seed Fund, the SBIR, that goes to innovative ideas. Right now in Kern County, last year, we received 0 of that $2.8 billion. But we're not alone. In the entire San Joaquin Valley that I reference, they received 0. By contrast, you have communities in the Los Angeles area that have over 30 awards. And these is basically money from the government that you do not have to repay, and you don't have to give up ownership of your particular business. So join us. So this is how we think we can help small businesses. We can assist them with packaging and financial information for the loans. We can advise on immediate funding options. And hopefully, if you have a funding need, you can attend one of the capital summits, again, free of charge. A lot of the assets and a lot of people aren't going to be covered by the disaster relief. It's the way it works. It's the way we've seen it. And it's easy for us to talk about that. We can also assist with the preparation of forecasted sales and expense statements. One thing that you're going to have to provide, of course, is a lot of historical information, your tax returns, personal financial, just like any other loan. But one of the things that you can provide is also a forecasted sales and expense form. We forecast cash flow all the time at the SBDC. And with the proper assumption, it can really be used as a roadmap financially for your business. You're going to need to prove that the business loan is going to be repayable because the repayment ability of the debt is really necessary. And I mentioned that this adds a little more stress to the business by adding more debt and an additional payment without really generating any more revenue. Also, the SBDC can assist with marketing, and we can also assist with social media presence in advance of construction. If you're going to have a lot of construction come in from out of the area, these could come from urban areas where they are more used to maybe using your social media, such as our Yelp webinar next week. So, get up on social media, and the shorter term, maybe residents that are there to help the community rebuild, once we get to that point, utilize them and try to market them and try to generate more sales. From my experience, I have run into some quirks of the disaster loan process. One of those was, I recall we had a client a number of years back, and what they did was they turned down a loan. And then they determined later that they needed it and they weren't able to access it. So you really want to think through the process of what you're doing before you reject a disaster loan, because it could affect some of the opportunities in the future going toward that particular lending. And also, we have other advisors. We have 15 senior level consultants here. So we have a number of others that provide consulting on that particular area, any particular area. So again, we mentioned that disaster loans are for small businesses that can't get financing elsewhere. They're generally when you've had a significant drop in sales. So I don't see a lot of the restaurants and service type businesses that are going to probably access it. I encourage you to go through the process and go through FEMA and go through them. If I had a restaurant in Ridgecrest, knowing what I know and anticipating, even though a little drop in sales potentially now, and maybe while it takes time to get up and going, I think that generally you'll see that isn't going to really help if you're closed for a very short period of time. But again, I encourage everybody to go through FEMA and go through the entire process if it is declared a disaster. And also, generally, you don't really recapture, from my experience, in a lot of you don't really do the disaster-related expenses. For example, the government here, I don't believe, is an insurance company to where if you have insurance, they'll come in and make you whole. That is not going to probably happen here. If you have a convenience store or high-end liquor store, for example, and you had a very expensive of wines that dropped, potentially that could happen. Check with FEMA. If you have one in your house that happens, it might be a problem trying to get that because you're not being made whole like you are with an insurance. And they're using this to give you disaster relief in order to maintain your present lifestyle. So we mentioned disaster loans aren't for everybody. And so maybe you need some other type of funding or maybe some other type of advice. Get advice from a number of sources if you have it. Your accountant, your CPA, the SBDC, etc. And remember that carrying that debt is going to be something that you do even after this is over. So disaster loans are unique. And the reason that they're unique is that they are a direct loan from the government. And what you find is that unlike many private loans, they are from private sources, even other types of SBA funding. For example, some of the SBA loans are generally government guaranteed rather than direct. The only exception to that would be if you are purchasing real estate, and that's kind of out of the context of our discussion here, but Mid-State Development Corporation does the SBA 504, and they're chartered to do so, which is for real estate for growing businesses. And that is a direct loan from the government, part of it. But generally, this is a direct loan from the government. Most of the other stuff is guaranteed. Businesses of any size, you're attending because you're maybe a small business, but even larger businesses are eligible for funds. And we mentioned that nonprofits, schools, and charities are also eligible. I don't believe in Ridgecrest there are any small agricultural cooperatives, but they are also eligible for the economic injury funds. And on economic injury, you know, I did mention a little bit earlier about a disaster that happened with the wildfires. And so if you're that same circuit board manufacturer in Tehachapi and you were selling to an area, say in Paradise, which is unfortunately no longer with us and gone, a business up there, or you're selling to maybe someone in LA or Ventura counties, there is still time by the August the 12th to apply for that, and we can assist you with that application. Here are some other resources to go to. Again, don't go here yet. We're not to that point yet. Just trying to get you ready for when we are at that point. And after you go to FEMA, they will direct you to SBA. But if you need any assistance or any contact numbers, those are their numbers. So a business loan application is going to be similar to a lot of the others that we talked about: tax returns, current financial statements. So you'll need current financials. If your business only does a tax return at the end of the year, you're going to need to come up with what is called an interim statement. That interim statement would be through a specific period, the end of July, the end of June, etc. Schedule of liability, so also what you owe. And another important thing is you'll need a personal financial statement. That is also the same thing as a net worth statement that if you've ever gone through the home lending process, basically the same thing where you have your assets and your liabilities that you list. And the thing that's important, if you're a partnership or an LLC or any other type venture that is not a sole proprietorship, a sole owner, then you're going to need to do a personal financial statement. And the personal financial statement will need to be for every partner that owns at least 15%. Tax returns from each owner and any affiliated businesses. And then there's also an SBA form that can break down the economic injury aspect of it. So we did mention these loans require collateral if they are available. So if you have collateral that's available, you're required to pledge it for physical loans over $14,000. So if you don't have collateral, SBA will not decline a loan for lack of collateral, but requires collateral that is available. And please don't run out to the SBA just yet and try to get this process going. Work on getting this information together that you're going to know is going to be necessary in order to get this loan. And the process should work out in the next short period of time. So at the SBDC, you can contact us afterwards. We're available at numerous times, and you can join us. You can call us. We have our contact information is online. We're available on all social media and through other sources as well. So that's the information I have for you. We'll look now to see if we have any questions, and we'll try to do our best to answer these questions.
All right, so we have a few questions coming in. Please submit any questions you might have through the Q&A box and be on the bottom of your screen, more than likely.
The first question is regarded to housing. And, you know, everything is getting very close, and I sympathize with you that are in shelters and other areas and dislocated, dislodged from your homes. The process is really getting there, and it's getting close. and I really hope that you can get some relief for housing. Unfortunately, I can only provide business information based on my experience over the last 30 years of disasters. The SBDC was at the resource fair last week in Ridgecrest when the disaster claim came in for the Erskine fire in the Kern River Valley, I believe back in 2015. We were there that day when they opened up, and we'll be there the day when they open up this time if we can. So best of luck out there. And for those that have housing issues, and Red Cross and other sources are going to be your best source. Next question.
All right. So if your business is dependent upon the major employer, which is the base, how do I anticipate the impact to the business, and you don't know yet the impact to the base?
That is a great question. That's a great question, because a lot of the impacts are going to be realized later on. And that is one of the reasons why they still have the period open for the wildfires that occurred in November of 2018. So, and again, that date is coming up on the 12th of August. So it is difficult to know, and it is difficult to realize. And that's where we're going to realize when it works, since it's a fluid situation. And there's going to be other areas that open up before others. So it is going to be very difficult on the economic injury loans in order to get that information, because you just don't know what it is this soon after the disaster. But keep in mind the process, and keep in mind how long you're going to be down is going to affect the amount of loan you could potentially qualify for. And again, I have to remind you that please register first with FEMA, particularly if it's a presidential declaration, which at least this presenter here today thinks is going to happen. And so FEMA will be the first contact source with that, and then the process evolves out from that.
Awesome. So a few more questions. What kind of businesses are usually affected and are eligible to apply for the economic injury loans?
That is another good question. And I think that generally what you're going to see is where, a little bit like the example that I gave, where your sales are cut off from a major supplier, or at least a significant contributor to the sales or revenue of that business. It's if it's just more minimal, the impact's going to be probably less. But generally, and oftentimes we don't know. We don't even know right now exactly when that occurred or when that's going to be relieved. So you could potentially have a little manufacturing business in town that the building it looks safe, and when it is actually reviewed, it could be red tagged, and it could be something you think is going to be 2 weeks. It could turn into 2 years. So unfortunately, this soon after the disaster, we don't know, but that is something that you can always figure out as you go on, and sometimes it's going to take time. And again, the FEMA is the place to start, with the Federal Emergency Management Authority, and they're the ones to go to first and to try to help. The business side of things, we can help you.
So another question is, do I need assistance when it comes to applying for these disaster loans, or can I go through the process by myself?
A lot of people can and will go through it by themselves. I would recommend talking to the SBDC or some other source that's familiar with the process, just because oftentimes you don't recall this this kind of little rule where if you do turn down the disaster funding, you might not be able to access it another time. It's not something where you can flip the switch and say, I changed my mind, I want it now. So going through all of your options, and maybe also looking at other sources. Let's say a business out there actually can get a disaster loan, but since you can't use new assets or you can't purchase other assets, maybe you're looking at saying, hey, I got a great opportunity here, and I'm going to need to get a loan to do that. And it looks like it's going to be good. You know, maybe you're adding on rooms to your hotel or whatever. but it's a great opportunity. And that's not going to be covered by a disaster loan. So maybe it's more advantageous looking at the other sources that are available and going through that route rather than waiting for the disaster process. And thank you, Paul, for correcting me on the Erskine Creek fire, June 23rd, 2016.
All right. So how much do the services through the Small Business Development Center cost?
Well, our fee is $0.00. When you pay your taxes, you pay for this because we are a program of the U.S. Small Business Administration funded through them. We are independent of the SBA, but $0. And generally most of our training, I can tell you in the 7 years I've been the director here at the SBDC for CSUB, that we have actually charged for maybe 2 events. So it is always our goal to even training events that, for the one I talked about earlier on the America Seed Fund, on the capital for that, it costs several $1,000s to put that program on. It's still going to be free.
So great. Another opportunity for looking for capital for your endeavor to take advantage of these opportunities that are presenting themselves in construction or other service industries is to attend our East Kern Capital Summit, which would be really helpful for our small businesses out in the eastern part of Kern County.
One thing I want to add to that, especially with the construction aspect, is we know of right now of likely $100 million coming for federal construction projects. So small contractors in a variety of different fields are going to be needed. The Ridgecrest community can do only a very small percentage of that. So the opportunity exists for contractors throughout Kern County. And you could be a variety of different contractors. You can be a general contractor. You can be an electrical contractor. You can be a fence contractor. So there's a lot of opportunities that are going to become available. We do at the SBDC have a consultant who specializes in government procurement and working with the government. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but there could be some preferences that are available for companies that register and for other companies with the government. So there's always that option too. But the contracting opportunities are going to be very plentiful based on the dollar amount and the damage that we've heard occurred.
So we have another question that's a little complex, but I think it's very important to bring up. If you are running your business from home and your home has been impacted by this event or another disaster, is there any crossover assistance for a home-based business between ones?
I don't know specifically that, but I do know that there are applicants, I have seen applicants over time that have suffered both home damage and actual business damage. And generally that's why it's important to go through FEMA, because they will know how to exactly treat that. And oftentimes you will end up with maybe either a 2-pronged approach to that, to where you have the personal and the business. So that is a good question. I cannot answer a home-based business if it applies. And again, it's going to depend on the property damage or if you've suffered an economic injury.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. Well, we're just here to remind you that we will be in the Ridgecrest area with consultants. We can meet with you there. We use Zoom quite a bit. We're using it right now. And we can actually meet face-to-face via the internet. So there's a lot of resources, a lot of ways that we can help and assist small businesses in Ridgecrest and the surrounding communities. We don't provide service to San Bernardino County. So if you're in Trona and have a small business concern, or LA County, we can actually refer you to the proper small business development center in those neighborhoods. So again, next week is, I really want to focus on the opportunity. I don't want you to forget about the opportunity that might exist out there with so much activity that's going to be going on. and to look at ways to try to grow revenue, particularly if you take on additional debt either through the disaster process or outside of the disaster process. So you can call us at the SBDC. Our number, 661-654-2856. Our website again is CSUB for California State University, Bakersfield. SBDC, that's 8 letters together. So CSUB-SBDC.com to sign up for services. And at the end of this webinar, we'll have a survey. We encourage you to actually do that. It'll be emailed to you afterwards. Please fill out your needs. And if you have any special needs or anything like that, please let us know. We will be back online. Unfortunately, you won't have to listen to me next week. We will be back with a Yelp professional, a gentleman named Roman Scalan. And he will be joining us to do Yelp, and we'll look into all the ways to improve our Yelp ratings and reviews with people that are going to be coming to town that use that particular app. So that'll be next week on the 24th. So that's it for today. For Elizabeth Hamlin, I'm Kelly Bearden. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.